Hey guys, tonight's story doesn't start with ale or bread. It starts with three women in shawls whispering like they know how you'll die. The tavern around them groans with smoke, laughter, and at least one angry chicken, but their whispers cut through it all. You lean closer, trying not to listen, but it's too late. Names, secrets, curses, sticky as the tables, wrap around you until you realize this place isn't just serving drinks. It's serving history you were never meant to hear, and now you can't leave. But before you get too cozy, take a second to gently tap that new hype button YouTube just added. It really does help little guys like me push through the algorithm. And take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. And drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. You arrive on foot, because of course you do. The road behind you is a mix of mud, stones, and regrets, and your boots, if one can call them that, gave up somewhere near the pig wallow 3 fields back. You squelch your way into something that might be a village, or might be several homes that gave up on boundaries and decided to lean into each other for support. Your back aches, your stomach makes noises usually reserved for cursed instruments, and the sky above you is the kind of gray that suggests even the sun didn't feel like showing up today. But ahead, there at Island, a building leaning slightly to the left, like it's whispering a secret to the tree beside it. The tavern, you smell it before you see it. A thick fog of roasted onions, overworked firewood, damp wool, and that particular perfume only achieved by a room full of men who believe washing is a political stance. It's oddly comforting, like your grandfather's lap, if your grandfather were made of beer and disappointment. Above the crooked door hangs a sign, an iron bracket bent by time and maybe a bar fight, from which dangles a swinging slab of painted wood depicting either a dragon sneezing or a dog on fire. No one's entirely sure. The letters beneath read, "The Thirsty Badger," but the B is missing, the D is backwards, and the R looks suspiciously like it's trying to escape. A man sits beside the door, cross-legged and blissfully unaware of pants. His beard is braided with crumbs, and his smile is the wide, wobbly grin of someone who has recently lost both a card game and the concept of shame. He holds up a turnip with solemn reverence. "For you," he says. "You take it. You don't ask questions. That's not the sort of place this island." You nod. He nods. The turnip nods. The door groans open, not because you pushed it, but because it's tired of waiting. You step inside. Darkness wraps around you, thick and immediate. A few candles flicker in the corners, like they're hiding from responsibility. The hearth dominates the far wall, belching out heat and bits of soot like it's chewing tobacco. A log snaps loudly, and someone curses in a language you're not familiar with but instinctively understand. Tables are scattered across the room like forgotten plans. None match. All wobble. The floor sticks slightly as you walk, though whether it's from ale, sap, or history is unclear. A woman behind the counter. Barmaid, innkeeper, storm in human form, raises an eyebrow at you without moving her head. She's drying a mug with a cloth that seems to be getting wetter with every pass. Her sleeves are rolled up. Her hair is tied back with what might once have been a curtain. You try to smile. She doesn't smile back. This, you sense, is a test. To your left, a man is asleep, face down in a plate of what may have been food, or may have been an art experiment involving lentils. A dog sits patiently beside him, tail wagging in slow motion, waiting for either a crumb or divine intervention. Near the hearth, a group of men play cards with the kind of intensity usually reserved for funerals and tax collection. One slams down a hand and shouts, "Ha!" The others groan. Someone throws a sausage. It is not retrieved. You try to move quietly, which is impossible. Your boots make that unfortunate wet sound with each step, like soggy applause. You pass a table of elderly women in shawls, drinking something purple and staring at everyone as if conducting a silent census of sins. One of them mutters, "New blood," and the others nod in synchrony. You find a bench against the wall and sit. It creaks. You creak. You and the bench come to an uneasy truce. The air is thick with the scent of roasting meat and singed herbs. Somewhere a musician plucks a lute, the strings loose and moody. The tune is familiar, but only because it's been played badly enough times to be memorable. A man near the window sings along in a voice that suggests he's trying to summon whales. He might succeed. You clutch the turnip tighter. It feels like protection. A mug is slammed onto your table. Ale. You didn't ask, but it arrives anyway, thick with foam and mystery. You take a sip. It tastes like someone wrung out a loaf of rye bread and dared it to be interesting. It's not bad. It's not good. It's ale. You drink again. At the next table, a man is passionately explaining a conspiracy involving chickens, the bishop, and a missing shoe. His audience is a rat that seems to be listening. The man gestures wildly, nearly toppling his drink. The rat licks its paw and nods. You wonder how long you'd have to stay here before that seemed normal. The answer might be, already. The door slams. Everyone looks up. A figure enters, hooded, cloaked, dramatic. The room collectively exhales, unimpressed. "It's just Bart," someone mutters. Bart lowers his hood with a flourish. He is wearing eyeliner. No one comments. He sits near the fire and orders milk. No one asks questions. You notice a board nailed to the far wall, crooked and peeling. It bears messages written in charcoal and blood, possibly both. Lost pig. Answers to king. Will bite. Looking for loot teacher. Must tolerate weeping. Found boot. Not mine. May be haunted. Beneath it, someone has scrawled. The stew is lying. No one has crossed it out. You finish your ale and consider another. The barmaid eyes you like. She knows your dreams and finds them mediocre. You raise your mug. She nods once and disappears into the back. A dog barks. A man hiccups the name Margaret. The lute hits a note that sounds like betrayal. You are, despite yourself, comfortable. The warmth from the hearth seeps into your bones. The noise is low and constant, like the inside of a contented beehive. Your shoulders drop. Your eyes flutter. Someone sneezes ale into a candle and briefly becomes a minor deity. You do not flinch. Welcome to the tavern. You are no longer just visiting. You're part of the background now, and the background here is alive, buzzing, cracked, and far too fond of turnips. The tavern door is crooked, heavy, and very possibly alive. It leans on rusted hinges like it's reconsidering its life choices. The wood warped with time, weather, and maybe some ancient insult it never quite got over. You approach cautiously, as one might approach a sleeping bear or an ant known for unsolicited advice. The handle is a bent iron ring, warm from the sun and slick from something you don't want to identify. You pull. The door groans, not like wood should groan, but like an old man being asked to stand up too fast. It shifts with the reluctant dignity of someone who remembers better days and resents you for not having lived through them. You try to squeeze through the gap, but the door doesn't want you to succeed. It resists. It catches on your shoulder. You sidestep. It catches your bag. You twist. It catches your pride. You push harder. It pushes back. For one brief moment, you and the door are locked in a struggle older than sin. You grunt. It groans. You think you hear it whisper, "Not today." Then, with a final wheeze that sounds like someone stepping on a duck in slow motion, It opens just wide enough to let you pass, but not wide enough to let your dignity follow. And as you slip through, half triumphant, half bruised, a goat darts past you on the way out. Full speed, ears flapping, eyes wide with secrets. It nearly takes your knee with it. You spin. No one inside reacts. Not a single head turns. A few mugs are raised. One man nods, slow and knowing, like the goat owed him money and he's finally been repaid. You check behind you. The door has closed again, smug and silent, as if nothing happened. You're not sure if it moved on its own or if the wind helped, but either way, you suspect it's planning a second round. Inside, the tavern exhales the sort of warmth that comes from many bodies, many drinks, and very little air movement. It's the kind of heat that settles on your skin like gossip, sticky and hard to ignore. You take a few steps forward, and the floor protests under your weight, creaking in a tone that implies you're not its first disappointment today. A table to your right hosts a game involving bones, 2 dice, and a third item that might be a pickled toe. Laughter erupts. Coins jingle. The man with the eye patch grins too widely for someone who just lost a finger. You sidestep a spilled drink, hop over what might be a chicken asleep in a puddle of ale, and head toward what looks like an empty seat near the fire. On the way, you are elbowed, patted, and briefly blessed by a man in robes who smells like fermented thyme. He tells you the spirits are watching. You're not sure if he means ghosts, gods, or just the barmaid. You nod anyway. It's safer. The door slams again. You jump. No one else does. It seems to do that when it's bored. You glance back to see it shaking slightly in its frame, as if daring the next person to try their luck. A boy with a basket of onions approaches, eyes it, and walks away. He knows better. The door doesn't open. It selects. You sit on the bench. It is sticky, but not wet. A victory. The man beside you smells like leather, salt, and poor choices. He hands you a cup of something dark and foamy. You didn't ask for it, but you also didn't say no, so now it's yours. It tastes like someone described fruit to a barrel, and then buried it for a week. It burns slightly. You pretend it's intentional. The man nods. First one's always a test, he says. You believe him. The tavern sways slightly, but you can't tell if it's the ale or the building. The beams overhead creak every time someone breathes too hard, and the chandelier, if you can call 3 candles tied to a wheel a chandelier, spins slowly without wind. Someone's coat is nailed to the wall for reasons unclear. The barmaid calls out an order in a voice that could shatter stone, and a man appears from the shadows carrying a plate of what looks like soup, but quivers like it remembers being a solid. Behind you, the door opens. Not a knock, not a creak, a soft hiss, like a promise. A stranger walks in. Long coat, muddy boots, eyes like someone who's forgotten more than you've ever known. The room pauses for exactly 3 seconds. Long enough to assess, not long enough to matter. Then, as if someone pressed play again, everything resumes. Laughter, shouting, the squeak of stool legs on warped floorboards. A baby cries. Someone throws a radish. The stranger takes a seat. The door shuts itself again. You try not to watch it, but it draws your eye. It's no ordinary door. It's a sentinel, a gatekeeper, a moody wooden bouncer with a grudge. It does not welcome. It tolerates. You consider going outside for air and immediately reconsider. The door would win. It always wins. A man at the next table is telling a story about a chicken that could sing. Half the tavern has heard it before, but they listen again anyway. You drink more of the mystery ale. It gets better. Or you do. You're not sure which. Someone claps you on the back hard enough to knock your soul out of alignment. You knew? They ask. You nod. Good. We need new blood. You try to smile. They laugh. It's unclear if they're joking. The fire spits a log onto the hearth. No one moves. The goat returns through the back door this time, dragging a sock. The sock has a hole in it. The goat has a plan. The barmaid yells, the goat yells back, and for a moment, it seems like they're speaking the same language. Eventually, the goat leaves again. You wonder if you imagined it. You didn't. You lean back. The ale is working. The warmth of the room has seeped into your bones like old secrets. The door, quiet now, looms behind you, its crooked frame glowing faintly in the candlelight. It waits. You're not sure for what. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But you know this. When you leave, it will remember you. And it will not make it easy. You are immediately hit by warmth. Not the cozy embrace you like grandma's hugs kind. No, this warmth is aggressive. It assaults your face with the force of 1,000 communal body odors, like someone tried to bottle the concept of inside and left it in the Sunday. It's a mixture of wood smoke, wet wool, boiled onion, and the faint but persistent scent of cooked feet. You pause just inside the doorway as your nose adjusts, your eyes squint, and your skin begins to sweat in parts of your body you were previously unaware could sweat. Somewhere above you, the ceiling leaks in slow, strategic drips, like it's interrogating you. You take a tentative step forward, and something squishes under your boot. You do not investigate. The floorboards are swollen and warped, shifting slightly as if the entire tavern is afloat on a sea of regret and spilled ale. Candles flicker in wall sconces, shaped like things that might once have been flowers but now resemble melted screams. The wax drips in time with the ceiling. You wonder briefly if the ceiling is crying because of the decor. A drop lands on your shoulder, lukewarm and deeply personal. The hearth at the far end of the room crackles with enthusiasm, sending sparks upward into a chimney that might as well be a decorative hole for all the actual ventilation it provides. Smoke curls along the rafters in thick loops, giving the impression that ghosts are lounging just above eye level. Every now and then, a particularly dramatic gust escapes and makes a run for the door, only to be tackled by a draft and dragged back in. You cough. A child in the corner coughs back. You've made a friend. In the corner closest to the fireplace, a bard strums a lute with the confidence of someone who has never tuned a lute and never plans to. His fingers move quickly, which distracts from the fact that none of the notes are in the same key or even the same general area. He sings a song with no discernible melody and lyrics that include the words beetroot, unforgiven, and nightmare in rapid succession. You don't know the tune, neither does he. Still, you nod. It's polite. The bard nods back, sweat beading on his brow like he's fighting off demons through sheer musical chaos. The room itself is dim, but not in a charming way. More in the way of someone stole the last good candle, and now we're stuck with these stubs. The light they cast is wobbly, uncertain, and vaguely accusatory. Shadows gather in the corners like unpaid debts. A figure shifts near the bar, cloaked and hunched, possibly asleep, possibly dead. No one checks. The barmaid steps around him without breaking stride, carrying a tray of frothy mugs and one extremely alarmed pigeon. A crash sounds from the rear of the room as two men knock over a table in what might be a fight or an enthusiastic game of elbows. No one flinches. A stool rolls past your feet and disappears beneath a bench. A man with a scar shaped like a spoon chuckles and mutters, "Third time this week." You don't ask what that means. You just step aside. The leak overhead grows bolder. It has now developed a rhythm. Drip, drip, pause, drip, drip. You suspect it's trying to communicate. You stare up at the ceiling, where ancient beams cross like a poorly assembled puzzle, and you spot the culprit. A swollen patch of wood with a steady pulse, like it's breathing. You look away. Some mysteries are safer ignored. You approach the hearth, seeking warmth, then realize warmth is not the issue. You are already sweating like a bard on tax day. Still, something pulls you closer. Maybe it's the promise of light, or maybe it's the man sleeping directly in front of the fire, curled around a sack labeled "definitely not turnips." You stand beside him for a moment. He snores. The sack shifts. You move on. The barmaid spots you from across the room and raises a brow with the efficiency of someone who's judged entire families with a glance. She gestures toward a stool that looks stable enough. You sit. The stool groans but holds. A mug appears in front of you before you think to ask. You take a sip. It's warm, frothy, and tastes vaguely of plum, ash, and something emotional. You drink again. A man at the next table is attempting to recite poetry to a chicken. The chicken is disinterested. You can't blame it. The poem rhymes "battle with rattle" 5 times in a row. You wonder what kind of day you've had that this feels normal. Then you remember the goat. Yes, this all tracks. From above, another leak begins. This one lands squarely in the middle of someone's bread. The man looks at it, considers the theological implications, shrugs, and eats around it. You are simultaneously horrified and impressed. A rat scampers across the beam above you, pausing dramatically to nibble something invisible before disappearing into a hole that wasn't there a moment ago. The leak slows. The bard begins a new song, this one slower, almost mournful, as if apologizing for the last one. He still hits the wrong notes, but now it feels intentional. You nod again, this time with feeling. The air shifts, thick with heat and smoke, and the rising perfume of stewed mystery meat. Laughter echoes from somewhere behind you. A mug is raised. A toast is made to the duck that got away. You do not know the story. You do not need to. The moment is complete without you. Another drop lands, this time on your hand. You look up. The ceiling creaks. You wonder briefly if it remembers when it was part of a tree, proud and strong in some distant forest, and if this is its revenge. You pat the moisture dry with your sleeve and take another sip. You could leave, of course. The door is right there, but the heat has settled into your bones, the smoke into your clothes, and the sounds of the room. Discordant lute, muttered curses, the occasional squawk have formed a sort of lullaby. You are not comfortable, but you are not leaving either. The ceiling drips once more. You raise your mug in solidarity. You ask for food, because that seems like a normal thing to do in a tavern, and your stomach has begun to audibly audition for the role of thunder. The innkeeper, who is built like she once bench-pressed a donkey, just to prove a point, gives you a long, slow look. It's not hostile, just weary. The look of a woman who has been asked this same question by too many travelers with weak constitutions and unrealistic expectations. Her hair is tied back with something that might once have been a curtain or a shamed towel, and her forearms are dusted with flour, soot, and menace. You clear your throat and repeat the request. "Something to eat, please." "Anything," she grunts. Not in response to you, but to the universe. Then she says, "We've got stew." She doesn't elaborate. You wait for a list, a menu, perhaps a choice. There is no list. There are no choices. There is stew. Just stew. There has only ever been stew. You suspect in your heart there will always only ever be stew. You nod. She nods back. A transaction complete. She disappears through a curtain that might be a doorway or a repurposed cloak, and you are left to imagine what exactly goes into something as ancient and inevitable as the stew. A few minutes later, she returns with a bowl. It is steaming. It is heavy. It is gray. The stew jiggles. Not dramatically, not like gelatin at a noble's feast, but subtly, threateningly, like it has opinions about being disturbed. You glance at the innkeeper, but she is already gone, leaving you alone with your decisions. The surface of the stew shines faintly in the candlelight, a sheen not unlike wet stone or gilt. You prod it with a spoon. It resists. You taste it. The flavor island. Not bad, but also not definable. It is warm, certainly. Salty, probably. There's something in there that might be a carrot if you believe hard enough. Maybe a turnip. Possibly a suggestion of lamb that passed through the pot briefly on its way to somewhere better. It doesn't taste like poison exactly, more like penance. It coats your tongue, your teeth, and, you suspect, the lining of your soul. You take another bite. It's easier this time. Across the room, a man slurps from his own bowl with such enthusiasm that it echoes. He wipes his beard with a sleeve that may once have been white, then lifts the bowl and drinks straight from it. You're not there yet, emotionally, but you admire his confidence. Another man, seated near the fire, pokes at his stew with a fork that has clearly lost two of its tines in battle. He seems less interested in eating and more in confirming that the contents are no longer moving. When satisfied, he resumes. A child at the next table eats her stew with bread. The bread has the density of a thrown brick and the flavor, judging by her face, of betrayal. Still, she dips, bites, chews with solemn determination. You imagine she was born here, raised on this stew, perhaps even baptized in it. There's a comfort in that thought, or a warning. You find something that looks like meat. It has texture. It has mass. You chew it slowly, respectfully, like it might be someone's ancestor. It dissolves eventually. You feel wiser. You feel older. You feel stewier. A man passes your table and glances at your bowl. Tuesday batch, he says knowingly. Still got some kick. He winks and moves on. You do not ask him what day it is now. You do not want to know. The innkeeper returns to clear the empty bowl of a nearby patron, who nods his thanks with the sluggish grace of someone recently exercised. She scoops the remainder of his stew into a bucket beneath the bar. You don't see what's in the bucket. You don't want to. The man leans back in his chair, folds his hands across his gut, and whispers. It gets easier the fourth time. You are not sure what that means. A fly lands on the rim of your bowl, tastes the surface of the stew, and immediately leaves. You try not to take that personally. Another bite. You're halfway through. You think, it's hard to tell, because the stew does not settle in layers, but in moods. Sometimes it's solid. Sometimes it's a broth. Occasionally, it makes a noise you assume is steam, but could also be commentary. You try to remember the last real meal you had. Bread with actual air inside it. Cheese that didn't glisten. Meat that didn't feel like a dare. But memory is slippery now, replaced by the overwhelming presence of the stew. It is a total experience, not a food, but an event, a lifestyle. You chew thoughtfully. The stew watches you back. A bard saunters by, peers into your bowl, and says, "Aha, the stew. She's kind tonight." Then he limps away, favoring a leg wrapped in cabbage leaves and poor choices. You decide not to wonder what the stew is like when it's in a bad mood. The ceiling drips again. A drop lands in your stew with a soft plop, and you realize you can't tell which part is ceiling water and which part is original recipe. You stir. The color does not change. Nothing ever does. And yet, you keep eating. Because the warmth, the salt, the mystery, it's all strangely satisfying. Not in a gourmet sense, but in the sense that you've survived worse. And whatever's in this bowl, it's been cooked for long enough to kill anything with ambition. It fills you, anchors you. You suspect you could survive a winter on this stew. You suspect some of the locals have. Eventually, you set your spoon down. Your bowl isn't empty, but it looks calmer, like it respects you now. You nod at it. It nods back, in spirit. A shared moment, a mutual truce. The innkeeper returns. She eyes your progress, nods once, and refills your mug without asking. "You'll sleep deep tonight," she says. Then she walks away. You believe her. The tavern boasts a wash basin that sits crooked in the corner like it's ashamed of being noticed. It is the size of an ambitious bucket or a cowardly tub, depending on your optimism, and it's currently filled with a liquid that might once have been water. The surface film is thick enough to qualify as its own ecosystem, and you suspect, though you cannot prove, that it has tides. The basin rests atop a wooden stand that leans to one side, listing as though it longs for retirement, or, failing that, a merciful fire. Next to it hangs a towel, or perhaps the remains of one. It flutters slightly in the breeze, though the window is closed. It is beige, not by design but by attrition, and frayed on every edge, as if it's been nibbled by centuries. You think it might have been white once, possibly back when dragons roamed and soap was still considered black magic. The innkeeper calls it the towel. You know this because she points to it and says, "That's the towel. Just one. Singular." It doesn't seem to get laundered so much as rotated and prayed over. A man approaches the wash basin. His beard is braided with twine and secrets. He pours a splash of ale from his mug onto his hands and scrubs with the confidence of someone who considers this thorough. He doesn't rinse, just wipes his now sticky fingers on the towel, pats his beard like a cat grooming its own lies, and nods in satisfaction. You watch this unfold and feel your immune system recoil. Beside the hearth, a woman is cleaning her teeth with a stick. Not a fancy stick, not even a whittled one, just a stick. It's got bark on it. She grinds it between her molars with a look of grim determination, like she's punishing the plaque. Every so often she spits into the fire, where it hisses and steams like a tiny dragon being mildly inconvenienced. She catches you staring and raises her brows as if to say, "Don't knock it till you try it." You look away. You will not try it. The smell in the air is complex. Not bad exactly, just dense. It's the kind of smell that has layers, each worse than the last, like peeling an onion made of regret. There's the mustiness of damp wood, the sharp tang of old ale, the faint floral of a cleaning herb used 3 days ago and then given up on. Somewhere beneath it all is a whisper of something fresher, cleaner, almost lovely. Lavender, perhaps. But it is fighting a losing battle. You wonder what the smell island, its hope, dying. The floor near the wash basin is warped from years of enthusiastic sloshing. A rat drinks from the puddle and walks away in a straight line, which is more than can be said for most of the patrons. Someone's boot print has been immortalized in dried mud just beside the basin, preserved like a fossil in a museum exhibit titled, "Why Socks Were Invented." You attempt to step over it, but the floor groans in warning. You take the long way around. A boy bursts in from the back room, shirtless and gleaming, hair wet, steam rising off his skin like he bathed in the cauldron. The room stops to stare. The barmaid throws a cloth at him. It hits him in the face and sticks. He peels it off, grinning, and yells, "Water's hot, for now," before disappearing into the crowd. A dozen eyes flick toward the back hallway, calculating risk, reward, and whether any of their joints still bend. No one moves. You consider asking about a bath, but the innkeeper beats you to it. 10 copper if you want to soak, 15 if you want it changed first. You don't ask what island, you don't want to know. The innkeeper shrugs. It's got herbs in it. She doesn't specify if the herbs are medicinal or just floating nearby. You nod vaguely and order more ale instead. Back at the wash basin, a young man with too many feathers in his hat sniffs the towel, makes a face, and wipes his hands on his own cloak. The towel sways gently in the aftermath, as if amused. It knows what island. It has no shame. A large man walks past you carrying what can only be described as a bucket with ambition. Steam rolls over the lip and leaves a trail of moisture in his wake. His shirt is off, folded neatly over one shoulder, and his chest glistens in a way that suggests either pride or a tragic misunderstanding of personal space. He whistles. The bard joins him. You make a note to avoid the hallway for at least an hour. At a nearby table, An old woman is plucking her eyebrows with the edge of a spoon. You pretend not to notice. She pretends not to care. A cat licks itself in the corner, then licks the bar, then licks the same corner again, as though cleaning is a concept not confined to humans. You suddenly understand why everything in the tavern has a sheen. Someone sneezes. Someone else blesses them. A third person throws a shoe and yells, "Not again." The sneezer disappears behind a curtain. The shoe is not retrieved. You eventually approach the basin. Slowly, cautiously, you dip a single finger into the water, instantly regretting every choice that led to this moment. The temperature is tepid, the consistency suspicious. You pat your hands dry on your own shirt and back away, whispering a silent apology to whatever gods oversee hygiene. The towel flutters, triumphant. You return to your table, slightly less clean than before. Your skin itches, but it might be guilt. Across the room, a man pours vinegar on a cut and hisses like a boiling kettle. He smiles. He's the healthiest person here. You drink more ale. It's not that people here don't care about cleanliness. They do. They just care about it differently. It's less about soap and more about ritual. Less about sterility and more about surviving the encounter with minimal scarring. You begin to understand. You begin to adapt. The towel waves in the candlelight. You wave back. You scan the room for a seat with the urgency of someone who knows the floor is only pretending to be clean. The options are limited. There are stools, yes, but most appear to have survived some kind of minor war. One is missing a leg entirely and leans against the wall like it's trying to pass out. Another has all four legs but wobbles so violently it might count as interpretive furniture. There's a bench near the fire, but it's already occupied by an elderly woman feeding bits of bread to her cloak, which appears to be snoring. You don't ask questions. You don't need those answers. Eventually, you find a stool with 3 legs and something resembling stability. It lists slightly to the left but doesn't scream when you press on it, which puts it well above average. You lower yourself slowly, cautiously, like you're making a deal with it. It holds. You're seated. The table in front of you is sticky in a way that suggests both history and ecosystem. A carving in the wood reads, "Don't trust the one with the tooth." You're not sure what it means, but you glance around anyway. You are not alone for long. A man thuds into the seat beside you with all the grace of a falling shelf. He's large in the way barns are large. Not just big, but somehow looming. His elbows rest on the table, like he's trying to hug it into submission. He smells faintly of onions, strongly of regret, and overwhelmingly of something that may have once been cheese. He grins at you, revealing a mouth that is mostly gum and mystery. "Name's Crib," he says. As if this is both explanation and challenge, you nod. Not because you understand, but because you are afraid not to. "I used to be a knight," he adds, wiping his nose on his sleeve and then inspecting the result with academic interest. "Swore fealty to a duke with 3 daughters and no teeth." The man, not the daughters, though one of them did have a tooth. Shared it. You take a sip of your ale and pretend it makes things clearer. It does not. Crib leans in, conspiratorial. "Fought in the Battle of the Ditch. You heard of it? You haven't. You lie and say you have." He nods approvingly. "Right brutal, that one," he says. 8 men, 4 pigs, and a cow named Justice. Only Justice walked away. You wait for a laugh. He doesn't offer one. The silence stretches like old dough. Crib adjusts his hat, which looks like it was once respectable but now lives a quiet life as a mobile swamp. It flops when he moves, and you're fairly certain it's damp. Not rain damp, existence damp. He's wearing an apron, stained with what might be stew, blood, or the memory of both. He smells like he's been in close contact with every meal you've ever regretted. "I wash it every month," he says, patting the apron fondly. "Whether it needs it or not." You nod again. You're nodding a lot. It's become a survival instinct. The stool creaks beneath you, voicing its dissent. Crib doesn't notice. He's too busy unwrapping a bundle from inside his coat. It's cloth, stained and frayed, and inside it is a turnip. He places it gently on the table between you like it's an offering. For later, he says. The turnip stares at you. You stare back. People pass behind you in a slow shuffle of boots, cloaks, and muffled arguments. Somewhere across the room, a dog barks once, decisively. A man responds by throwing a boot in its general direction. The dog catches it midair and resumes barking with the boot still in its mouth. Crib claps once, delighted. Smart one. That, he says. Used to be a priest. Got excommunicated. Bit the bishop. You're about to ask a question, any question, when a third figure appears beside the table. He looks down, frowns at your stool, and says, I was sitting there. Crib doesn't miss a beat. You were passed out on the floor, Gurn. That don't count. The man, Gurn, apparently, grumbles something about protocol, dignity, and is back. Then he wanders off, muttering to himself and shaking his fists at nothing in particular. Crib chuckles and lifts your mug and toast. To victory, or a decent nap, he says, and drinks deeply from his own mug, which may be part of a chamber pot. You choose not to investigate. The stool shifts beneath you again, and you try to recenter yourself without drawing attention. Crib notices anyway. Ah, she leans left, that one, he says. You just gotta lean with her, like dancing, with furniture that might kill you. You lean. The stool groans but holds. Crib nods, pleased. More patrons arrive. A man in armor made entirely of mismatched plates settles into a chair that immediately collapses. He accepts this fate with grace, pours ale down his front, and remains seated on the floor. No one offers help. This seems normal. You hear the lute start up again. The bard is trying a new song, this one about betrayal, livestock, and possibly soup. Crib hums along tunelessly. I like this one, he says. Reminds me of the time I married a goose. Long story, ends with feathers. You blink, then nod, because at this point, resistance is futile. Crib smiles, wide and toothless. You're all right, he says, and pats your shoulder with a hand like a ham in glove form. Most folks judge, not you. You listen. That's rare. You didn't intend to listen. You were just trying not to die. But now, you feel oddly honored. The stool creaks again, protesting your weight, your choices, or simply the passage of time. Crib offers you a piece of the turnip. You accept. It's terrible, but it's something. The bard strums with the confidence of a man who has never tuned an instrument and never intends to. His fingers move like he's lost a bet with dexterity itself. But somehow, through divine chaos or sheer momentum, music happens. It pours from his fiddle in bursts and screeches, a sound somewhere between celebration and exorcism. The crowd doesn't seem to mind. In fact, they appear invigorated, like they've been waiting all week for this exact moment of auditory violence. He starts a new song. You recognize none of it. The melody is an unfamiliar creature, lurching unpredictably between notes like it's trying to escape itself. The lyrics, such as they are, seem to focus primarily on a ferret named Elric who betrayed his village. You don't know how or why, but there's blood, definitely fire, and at least one unjust trial. The bard howls the word ferret with a devotion that suggests unresolved personal history. Across the room, a woman stands abruptly, knocks over her stool, and throws her arms into the air like she's being called home. She stomps once, twice, then begins a dance best described as aggressive hesitation. Her partner is a chicken, not metaphorically, an actual chicken. It clucks once in approval, spins in place, and leads. She follows with abandon, her skirt twirling and catching on a nearby patron's belt, who hoots like this is both expected and welcomed. No one questions the chicken. The rhythm increases. The fiddle hits a note so high and sharp it seems to slice the air into shivering ribbons. A man near the hearth clutches his mug as the vibration rings through the wood. The note bends slightly, maybe out of enthusiasm, maybe out of physical trauma, and with a sudden crack, the mug splits in two. The ale inside doesn't fall, it erupts. The man cheers. Everyone cheers. The chicken flaps twice and curtsies. The bard doesn't pause. He doubles down, bow sawing violently across the strings with such force you think he may be summoning something. A spirit, a memory, a rash. It's hard to say. Sweat pours down his face, but his eyes are closed, either in ecstasy or self-defense. You wonder if he knows where he island. If he ever did. Another verse begins, somehow louder, somehow more ferret-focused. The crowd roars each time the name is mentioned, as if this Elric still owes them money. Someone bangs a spoon against a plate. Someone else hits the wall with a boot. A jug appears in the hands of a man with a beard so large it requires navigation. He begins to thump it in rhythm, creating something vaguely percussive that might once have been called a beat. More instruments join in, none of them invited, all of them insistent. A man produces a flute from somewhere unspeakable and begins to trill a counter-melody that conflicts violently with the original. A woman with a tankard sings harmony from the floor, possibly unconscious, possibly just deeply committed to her craft. A second chicken enters, surveys the room, and perches on a stool with dignified judgment. The first chicken bows slightly. They are rivals now. The floorboards rattle. Tankards slam. Feet stomp in what may be dance or maybe collective seizure. You feel the music in your chest, your teeth, your past lives. You're certain one of them died to this song. Crib claps beside you, on beat, off beat, and sometimes diagonally. His cheeks are flushed. His hat is askew. He sings along without knowing a single word. You do the same. The bard leaps onto a table mid-verse, legs splayed like a heroic goat. He lands in a pool of ale, slips, recovers, and turns the fall into a dramatic knee slide that ends dangerously close to the fire. The fiddle screeches again, and someone in the back lets out a scream that sounds suspiciously joyful. Two patrons link arms and spin each other until gravity becomes optional. A stool collapses. No one stops. Your foot starts tapping. Against your will. Against reason. The song digs into your soul with unwashed fingers and pulls. You don't resist. You slap your palm against the table in time with the beat, shouting the only line you've picked up so far. Elric, you traitorous beast. You don't know what Elric did. You don't care. You're with the people now. The music swells. The chickens engage in what appears to be a formal duel. Beak to beak, wing to wing, they circle. The bard plays faster. His strings begin to fray visibly. Smoke rises. He doesn't notice. Or he does, and considers it an encore. Someone throws a scarf into the air. It catches on a ceiling beam and dangles like a flag of surrender or victory. It's unclear which. A group of older women begin clapping in sync, eyes locked on the chickens. Bets are placed, names are shouted. Someone claims to be the chicken's cousin. The final verse hits like a drunken avalanche. The bard belts the climax, a screeching line involving betrayal, a bucket of eels, and vengeance from beyond the coop. The fiddle shrieks in one final defiant note. There is a silence. Then, eruption. Everyone yells, some in joy, some in existential panic. A bench tips over. The floor trembles. A child throws up. The second chicken bows and retreats. The first one is lifted onto a patron's shoulders and paraded around the room like a returning champion. The bard collapses backwards into a chair that wasn't there a second ago. He sighs, spent. The fiddle smokes gently in his lap. He reaches for a drink. His hand lands in soup. He drinks anyway. You sit in stunned silence, your ears ringing, your pulse confused. Crib slaps you on the back with pride. Now that's a tavern tune, he says, his voice hoarse with admiration. "They'll be singing that one for weeks. You believe him. You fear him. You fear the chicken." The music begins again. A new song. This one mentions geese. You brace yourself. The bread arrives with a thunk. Not a clink, not a soft thud. A thunk, deep and resonant, like a small tombstone being placed with ceremony on your plate. It doesn't bounce. It settles, confident in its density. You stare at it, briefly unsure whether you've been served food or issued a challenge. It's oval-shaped, technically, though that seems generous. It has the texture of carved sandstone and the emotional energy of a punishment. You consider asking for a knife, but realize it would be the first casualty. You attempt to lift it, not daintily. This isn't a dainty kind of place, but with the firm grip of someone bracing for resistance, you get your fingers underneath it and strain upward. It rises with you, but reluctantly, as though it's weighing your soul first. Crib leans over and watches, nodding solemnly. "Good loaf that," he says. "Killed a man last winter. Threw it across the room. Hit him in the temple. Never spilled his ale, though." You pause, not entirely sure whether he's joking. The bread in your hand doesn't blink. It just island. You try to tear it. Not break, not slice. It's tear. Like it's bread. Like you remember bread being. You grab both ends and pull. Nothing happens. You pull harder. It resists. You use your knees for leverage. The loaf remains intact, unbothered, possibly amused. Crib offers you a suggestion. Try warming it near the fire first. Sometimes that softens it. Sometimes it just makes it angrier. The crust is a geological formation. You tap it with your knuckle and feel the vibration go up your arm. It echoes. You swear it echoes. The interior, assuming it has one, remains a mystery. You contemplate hitting it with your mug, not to eat it, just to see who wins. At the next table over, a man with one eyebrow and no visible teeth casually dips his own loaf into a bowl of stew. He holds it there for a good long while, maybe counting in his head, maybe praying. Then, with the ease of long experience, he lifts it and bites down. You watch his jaw move with the slow churn of someone chewing masonry. His eyes don't blink. His knuckles are white. You respect him more than anyone you've ever met. You attempt the same technique, dipping your bread into the questionable stew in front of you. The bread sizzles slightly, but you assume that's normal. You leave it in long enough that you begin to worry about it absorbing your fingerprints. When you finally try to bite into it, the corner chips your tooth. The stew has done nothing. The bread has absorbed no moisture. It is a sponge that refuses to learn. You place it back on the plate, softly, with the reverence of a man defeated by dinner. "First time?" asks an old woman nearby, gnawing her own loaf like it owes her money. You nod, mouth closed, lips pressed tight to protect your remaining dental structure. She cackles and returns to battle. Children across the room are playing a game with a round of rolls. Not playing with the rolls, playing catch. One throws a roll into the air. It hits a beam, ricochets off a wall, and lands with a thud that startles the chicken, who has returned to reclaim its corner. The bird eyes the roll with suspicion, rightfully so. The innkeeper walks past, sees your untouched loaf, and snorts. "That'll keep for weeks," she says. "Longer, if you wrap it in cheesecloth and keep it under your bed. Makes a good doorstop, too." You open your mouth to respond, but no words come out. Just a small puff of disbelief. She points to a scar on her arm. "Got this from a sourdough. Week-old batch. Had to wrestle it off the shelf." You thank her with a smile that does not reach your eyes and return your attention to the food, or the item formerly known as food. You poke it with a fork. The fork bends. You realign it under the table, shamefully. Crib, ever helpful, reaches into his coat and produces a small vial. He uncorks it, pours a single drop onto his own bread, and waits. The bread hisses. Steam rises. He smiles. Vinegar, he says. Secrets not softening the bread. Secrets convincing it to surrender. You wonder briefly if Crib might be a wizard, or just someone who's made peace with pain. You borrow the vial and try it on your loaf. It trembles faintly. That seems like progress. You go in for another bite. This time, it gives slightly. Not a lot. Just enough to remind you that it's not a brick. Just a suggestion of one. Someone begins juggling near the hearth. They're using rolls. One of them drops, hits the floor, and does not bounce. A dog picks it up and immediately spits it out, then looks personally offended. You don't blame it. The bard strikes up another tune. This one, a ballad about forbidden love and poorly cooked grain. You think it might be about bread, or a woman named Bread. Either way, the timing is eerie. You take another bite. Chew. Chew more. Begin to suspect that chewing is no longer working, and you're just slowly eroding the bread through determination. Crib claps you on the back. There you go, he says. You're learning. First it breaks your teeth, then it builds your character. Your jaw aches. Your dignity withers. But you chew anyway. At the corner table, a man in a cloak rolls his bread into a cloth and tucks it under his arm like a loaf-shaped dagger. You see him slip it into a satchel. He might be saving it for later. He might be planning a heist. You think about saving yours, too. Not for eating, but as a tool, or a warning, or ballast. It feels like something you'll carry with you forever, whether physically or spiritually. The crust cuts the roof of your mouth. You accept this. You are not hungry anymore. You are not full either. You are simply changed. The first sip surprises you, not with flavor, but with the lack of one. It is neither cold nor warm, not sharp nor smooth. It simply is, like a murky puddle in a forgotten field. It coats your tongue in something that might once have been hops, and now is just the memory of a plant that tried its best. You nod appreciatively, because that's what everyone else is doing, and you are not prepared to be the first to say the emperor has no taste buds. You glance at Crib. He's halfway through his mug, and already grinning at nothing. His teeth are stained slightly pink. You think it might be from the ale. You hope it's from the ale. He notices your hesitation and gestures with the enthusiasm of a man who has nothing left to lose. Go on, he says. It gets better after the second. You take another sip. It does not get better. The taste deepens, but in the way a well does when you realize there's no bottom. This one brings out notes of burnt apple peel, copper, and what may be moss. You imagine this ale has been aged in a boot, possibly several boots, passed down through generations. You smile. It is a lie, but a socially acceptable one. A cheer erupts near the hearth. Someone has slammed down an empty mug with triumph, and the barkeep fills it again without asking. She does not pour so much as release the ale from a height, letting it crash into the mug with all the grace of a waterfall off a poorly built dam. It sloshes. It foams. It hisses like it knows it's about to be consumed and resents you personally. You look around. Everyone has a mug. Some have two. A man with a lute is sipping from a tankard the size of a child. He finishes, wipes his mouth with his sleeve, and starts playing again, even worse than before. No one complains. A woman leans over the bar to shout for more, and the barkeep responds with a grunt that somehow conveys both annoyance and affection, possibly even marriage. Crib refills your mug from a clay pitcher that smells like a dare. He spills a little on the table, and the ale eats through a ring of candle wax with alarming speed. He winks at you like this is part of the charm. Don't think about it too much, he says. That's how it gets in your head. You nod and take another sip. This one is worse. Somehow both sour and flat, like it's tired of existing but committed to the bit. You feel it spread through your chest, like a bad idea. Still, it's warm, and your stomach doesn't immediately reject it, which counts as a win. The ale is not trying to kill you. It's just not trying to keep you alive either. Across the room, two men are locked in a drinking contest. They don't speak, they just maintain aggressive eye contact while lifting mugs and slamming them down in rhythm. The table between them shudders with every impact. One of them is sweating, the other is vibrating. The crowd watches in reverent silence. You hear someone mutter, 16, like it's a sacred number. A dog wanders by with a mug in its mouth. No one questions this. You're not sure if the dog is drinking or delivering, and honestly, either answer raises further questions. It drops the mug at the foot of an elderly man who may or may not be asleep. The man wakes up, drinks it in one gulp, and falls asleep again. The dog nods. The transaction is complete. You take another sip. Your body adjusts. The taste hasn't changed, but your resistance has worn down like an old boot heel. You feel yourself warming, a creeping glow that starts at your ears and spreads through your shoulders. You laugh at something Crib says, though you didn't actually hear it. The ale is doing its job now. You become aware of the background noise, not as a collection of conversations, but as one long, rolling hymn of tavern life. Clinking mugs, occasional shouts, someone crying softly into a loaf of bread, a fart that gets cheered. It is a symphony of nonsense, and you are now an instrument in it. You drink again. This time, you don't flinch. A woman nearby raises her mug and shouts something unintelligible. Everyone around her raises theirs in return, yelling the same thing but louder. You lift your mug too, repeating the sound without understanding it. You may have just agreed to fight a goat, or marry one. Either way, it feels right. The room tilts slightly, but only in spirit. The bard plays a note so sour it wilts a nearby flower arrangement, which may have just been someone's hat. Laughter rolls through the room like thunder over hills, and someone throws a spoon. You do not know why. No one does. It doesn't matter. You are halfway through your mug now. Time slows down in the way it does when your senses become unreliable narrators. Crib is telling a story about a battle he may have invented. You hang on every word. His mug never empties. You're not sure he even pours it anymore. It just replenishes through sheer force of personality. The barkeep pours herself a mug and drinks from it like it owes her rent. You see her glare at the pitcher afterward, as if daring it to ferment any further. You respect her more than most clergy. You take your last sip. The mug is empty. You stare into it, expecting wisdom or a warning. It offers neither. Just a faint foam mustache you're too far gone to care about. Crib slaps you on the back. First one's always like that, he says. Second one's worse. Third one doesn't exist. Fourth one speaks to you. You don't know what that means, but you nod anyway. Around you, the tavern breathes. It creaks and belches and hums. You are now part of it. Your breath smells like fermented apples and resignation. Your vision has gone soft around the edges, and your legs feel like maybe they're suggestions, not limbs. Someone begins to sing. You do not know the words. You sing along. You will never fully leave. Near the hearth, the fire crackles like it's listening too. Two women sit side by side on a bench that looks as if it might also be holding grudges. One is knitting something indistinguishable, possibly a scarf, possibly a trap, and the other holds a mug in both hands, as if it contains not ale but secrets. Their faces are weathered, but not tired. These are not passive observers of tavern life. These are apex predators. You notice them because they're whispering, and nothing attracts attention faster than people deliberately trying not to have any. Their heads lean in. One says something too soft to hear. The other gasps like she's just heard a murder confession or a recipe without butter. You're not sure which. It could be both. You try not to stare, which only makes you stare more. The one knitting catches your eye for a fraction of a second and gives you a look that both invites and threatens. You shift closer, slowly, as if you've been summoned by gravitational pull and not sheer nosiness. A third woman appears. She's simply island. You never see her arrive. One moment there's space, the next there's her, wrapped in shawls that might have had colors once, and eyes like she's already imagined your funeral. She nods at the others, settles in without ceremony, and begins talking like she never left the conversation. You realize you're now in the presence of something sacred, or profane, or both. The tavern's gossip circle has convened. They speak in tones that fall just below audible. You lean closer, careful not to look too interested. Crib watches you from his seat, chuckles into his ale, and gives you a knowing nod. Careful, he says. You listen too close. You disappear for a week, and come back knowing who's cursed and who's pregnant. Sometimes both. The woman with the mug leans toward the others. You hear the words, Father Alric, and candles, and again. One of them huffs through her nose like a disappointed librarian. You gather that something has transpired involving the priest, an abundance of wax, and what may or may not have been a chicken. You don't know what it means. You don't care. You need more. The third woman, the one who simply arrived, begins listing names. You don't recognize any of them, but the tone implies judgment. Someone named Tilda is at it again. Someone else named Renfred was seen. No verbs are needed. Just those words, and the others nodding along like this is all deeply obvious and equally scandalous. You sip your drink and pretend it's not shaking slightly in your hand. One of them mutters, "The cheese," and everyone stiffens slightly. A shadow crosses their faces. This is not new gossip. This is ancient, unresolved lore. There was cheese. There is no longer cheese. No one knows where it went. Everyone knows who took it. No one is saying. One woman whispers something that includes the phrase, "under the floorboards." Another makes the sign of protection over her stew. You now understand that this is not conversation. This is oral history. The innkeeper passes by, sees the three women, and nods once before continuing on. Not a casual nod, a ceremonial one, like acknowledging village elders or the last witnesses of a cursed relic. A dog sits near their feet, unmoving, alert. You are not sure if it belongs to any of them, or if it too simply exists here. The woman knitting speaks now. Her words are few, her delivery slow and deliberate. The others lean in as if receiving prophecy. You do too, just slightly, unable to help yourself. You catch part of a sentence. The baker's daughter, and a lute string. And suddenly everything in your life before this moment feels irrelevant. You need to know what the baker's daughter did with that lute string. You are invested. You are implicated. The third woman reaches into a pouch and produces something that might be candy or might be bait. She sucks on it thoughtfully, the sound somehow echoing even in the din. Her eyes drift across the room, landing on everyone and no one. When they land on you, your soul blinks. "Best not to eavesdrop, dear," she says, without raising her voice. Things overheard tend to stick, like burrs or accusations. You nod, unsure if she's threatening you or saving you, maybe both. Then they laugh. Not cackling, not wicked, just three women laughing in unison, like they've shared this laugh before over 100 different drinks and 1,000 bad decisions. One leans over and gently slaps the other's knee. You exhale without meaning to. For a second, you think you've been accepted. Then they go quiet again. A pause, a reset. Now the whispering resumes. It involves a man named Osric, someone's garden, and something being unnaturally long. You choke on your ale. The third woman smiles without teeth. You want to ask a question. You don't know which one. Any of them. All of them. You want to pull a chair closer, or offer them stew, or become invisible just long enough to hover in the corner and record everything they say for the rest of your life. But instead, you sit still. You sip your drink. You wait. If you're lucky, they'll forget you're there. They never do. Later, Much later, one of them stands. Her bones sound like 1,000 tiny doors opening. She gathers her shawls, which may also be wings, and drifts toward the exit like a leaf with intent. The other two follow after a moment, without word or ceremony. You watch them go. So does everyone else. A hush falls over the room, just for a second, not out of fear, but reverence. Crib leans over. "That was Merwin," he says. "Used to be a midwife, a matchmaker, and a murderer. Never proven." You blink at the door they've just exited through. It sways slightly, as if tired. You realize you've learned everything and nothing. And somehow, that's exactly the right amount. The tavern cat arrives without warning, as cats do, and takes possession of your foot like it's renewing a lease. You don't move, partly because it's rude to evict tenants mid-warmth, but mostly because the cat has a look in its eye that says you'd lose the argument. Its fur is a patchy tapestry of beige, soot, and what might be ash from a long-forgotten fire. It purrs with the force of a distant landslide and smells faintly of fish and secrets. A low bleat announces the return of the goat, who now wears a knitted scarf that suggests someone tried their best and then gave up halfway through. It's orange, mostly. The goat struts in like it's owed applause and stops beside a table where an old man absent-mindedly feeds it crusts. No one acknowledges this as odd. This is the same goat that bolted past you earlier, possibly in search of freedom or cabbage. It has returned, as goats always do, not because it was called, but because it has things to supervise. You're still processing this when the bench beneath you shifts, and you glance down to find a duck settling in under your legs, not waddling, nesting. It arranges itself with the slow dignity of a creature that has long since learned that comfort is a personal responsibility. Its feathers are slightly damp and carry the sharp tang of a bog. You wonder if it's a paying customer or just squatting, judging by the way it quacks once. Sharp, declarative. You decide not to question its authority. You glance at Crib, hoping for confirmation that this is, in fact, an unusual amount of wildlife for one drinking establishment. He raises an eyebrow like you've asked whether taverns usually serve drinks. "Animals come here same as us," he says, shrugging. "Good warmth, good company, fewer wolves." You try to remember the last time you judged an animal for its drinking preferences. You cannot. From across the room, a rooster hops onto a stool. Not a tall one, just enough to give it presence. Its comb is lopsided, and one of its talons is wrapped in what appears to be lace. It surveys the room with the air of someone looking for a fight or a flute solo. Behind the bar, the innkeeper sees it, sighs, and sets out a shallow saucer filled with ale. The rooster jumps down, struts over, and drinks like a veteran. He drinks for free. Someone whispers near your elbow. "Why?" You whisper back. "Saved the tavern once," they reply, eyes wide. "From bandits, or taxes, one of those." You're not sure if they're serious. You're also not sure it matters. The animals are not mere background here. They are fixtures. The dog that passed earlier returns with a napkin tied around its neck and a bone in its mouth. It hops onto a bench beside a woman who shares her stew without looking. The dog eats slowly, chewing with purpose, and then licks its paws like it has etiquette. Someone toasts the dog. The dog nods, solemnly, like a mayor. The cat shifts its weight on your foot, testing it. You tense, unsure if this is a prelude to claws or affection. It kneads once, twice, then curls its body tighter. You feel chosen. You also feel slightly pinned, but you accept this as the cost of approval. A ferret streaks across the floor. No one reacts. You catch only a blur, a streak of fur and mischief, and then it's gone beneath a table. Moments later, a pouch tumbles from under a chair. You're not sure if it was dropped or stolen. The man at the table picks it up without looking and tucks it away. Routine. A small pig in a vest enters through the front door. You stare. It walks. No, saunters toward the hearth, curls up beside the fire, and sighs like a retired warrior who's seen too much. A child leans down and pats its head. The pig grunts once, approvingly, then resumes its nap. The scarf-wearing goat nods in the pig's direction, as though acknowledging an equal. You try to imagine a world where this scene would be strange. You fail. The bard, who has finished butchering a song that may have once involved romance and definitely involved shouting, points his lute at the duck and sings a quick verse in its honor. The duck responds by flapping once and quacking in what you assume is key. The room cheers. You join in, unsure why. It feels deserved. A woman at the next table shares a tale about how the tavern's cat once detected a haunted keg. Everyone nods. You look down at the cat on your foot, who opens one eye and stares directly into your soul. You nod back. Someone in the corner insists that if you drink beside the rooster, your luck improves or worsens. The point is, something happens. The rooster, finished with its saucer, climbs back onto its stool and flaps once. A few coins fall from a nearby shelf. No one moves to pick them up. They are clearly his. You're not sure if the animals run the tavern or simply haunt it. Either way, they belong. You sip your drink, the taste now oddly pleasant in contrast to the goat's staring contest with a candle. There is no line between patron and pet here. Only a continuum. Some animals wear clothes, some humans don't. That feels fair. Later, the duck waddles out from beneath the bench, leaves an egg near the fire, and returns with a look that says, "That's your problem now." The cat finally shifts, stretches with the grandeur of a dying star, and leaves your foot with a numb spot and a sense of loss. It disappears into the kitchen, likely to judge the stew or nap on a pile of spoons. You miss it immediately. The goat curls up under a table. The rooster watches the door. The pig snores into a pile of kindling. You sit back, realizing you're outnumbered, and completely fine with that. He occupies the farthest, darkest corner of the tavern, a place so devoid of light it seems to suck brightness in and turn it into anxiety. You didn't see him when you first arrived because your brain helpfully edited him out, the same way it ignores threats it can't process or vegetables it doesn't want to eat. But now that you've adjusted to the tavern's tapestry of goat scarves and duck etiquette, your eyes settle on him like a dropped coin finding a drain. The cloak is dark, almost too dark. Not black exactly, but the color of a memory you've tried not to revisit. It shimmers faintly when he moves, though he doesn't move often. Mostly he just sits. One gloved hand holds a mug. You assume it contains ale, but it might be secrets, or liquid revenge, or just very old tea. His hood is pulled low, hiding everything but the edge of a frown and the suggestion of a beard that might also be smoke. He's brooding, or he's cold, or both. It's hard to tell when someone's entire emotional spectrum is hidden behind shadow and atmosphere. You ask Crib about him in a whisper, but Crib just chuckles like you've asked about death taxes or dragons. "No one knows," he says, which is not a helpful answer, but apparently the only one anyone gets. "He was here before the tavern." You assume this is a joke. You're not completely sure. The bartender won't look in his direction, but sets a drink on the bar every hour like clockwork. Someone always delivers it. Sometimes the goat. Sometimes the bard, who once tripped and spilled half the mug and was then silent for 3 days. Not ill, not cursed, just introspective. After that, the bard started writing all his songs in minor key. Rumors swirl. You hear 3 conflicting versions of the man's origin within 20 minutes. A woman swears he's a wizard, exiled from the northern forests for creative spell accounting. A man with too many teeth claims the cloaked figure is actually a disgraced noble who tried to marry a horse and lost the duel that followed. A child who should be asleep insists it's not a man at all, but a curse wearing a coat. None of them are kidding. He shifts once and everyone in the tavern subconsciously leans away. You wonder if you should go speak to him. You don't wonder this for long, because your instincts immediately raise a sign that says, no, in bold medieval script. Still, there's a pull, a curiosity, the kind of urge that causes people to touch things clearly labeled hot or do not summon. The cat from earlier approaches him, not cautiously, boldly, with the confidence only cats and royalty possess. It jumps into his lap. He doesn't flinch, doesn't pet it either, just allows the moment to happen, as if the cat is a necessary part of his aesthetic. The fire crackles like punctuation. You imagine speaking to him. You rehearse a line in your head. Rough night? No. Too casual. Nice cloak? Definitely not. Are you the personification of my repressed trauma? Too specific. You settle for silence, which is apparently the preferred language in his corner. He hasn't ordered food. You realize this suddenly. Everyone else has consumed some form of stew, or stew-adjacent material, or weaponized bread. He has not. The innkeeper brings him nothing but drink, and sometimes a candle, which is placed on his table and allowed to burn out without interference. You don't know if he's paying. You suspect no one asks. The woman with the ferret stares at him once and murmurs, "He remembers the plague." You hope she means metaphorically. You hope a lot of things now. He speaks once, just once. You don't hear it. You only see the effect. A man near the fire freezes, stares into the middle distance, and slowly sets down his spoon like it's betrayed him. He stands and leaves without finishing his meal. You never learn why. The mysterious figure sips from his mug. The motion is slow, precise, deliberate, like each drop is a contract. A chicken wanders by his table and immediately turns around, reconsidering all of its choices. You swear his hood turns in your direction, but you feel it more than see it, like gravity or shame. You look away quickly, studying your ale as if it holds answers. It doesn't. It barely holds ale. Someone claims the man once healed a dying dog by whispering into its ear. Someone else insists he killed a man for spilling salt. A third person says he's just really into ambiance. You believe all three. At one point, the bard strikes up a song that begins to reference cloaked men in corners. He stops midway through the second verse, strums a single solemn chord, and says, "Or not," before switching to a sea shanty about bread theft. The duck waddles toward his table, and then abruptly detours. You're not even surprised anymore. You don't learn anything else about the man. You don't approach him. You don't speak to him. But you feel like he's spoken to you, in the way that fog speaks to windows or mountains speak to travelers. Nothing clear, nothing direct, but something lingers, the sense that you've been acknowledged, judged, and then carefully filed away in a drawer labeled harmless, for now. Later, when you get up to stretch your legs, you look back toward the corner. The chair is empty. No one saw him leave, but the candle still burns, untouched. The game begins before you're aware you're playing. One moment you're sipping your ale and wondering whether the cat has accepted you as kin, and the next a set of dice lands in your hand like a gift from a mischievous god. You look up. A man with a nose that has seen several wars grins at you through a missing tooth and says, "Your turn." You stare at the dice like they might bite. They might. The table before you is crowded with men who look like they've been thrown out of better places and decided to stay thrown. Tankards crowd every edge. A pile of coins, buttons, a very old plum, and a tooth form the betting pool. You are not sure what currency the tooth represents. You do not ask. Crib sits beside you, nodding solemnly. They call this game the long fall, he says, then leans in and adds, but it used to be called Who Screamed First. You can't tell if that's a joke. You laugh anyway, just to be safe. The rules are unclear, possibly because there are none. A man yells, "Double rooster," and three others groan and slap their foreheads like they've been personally betrayed. Someone passes you a wooden spoon, that's been carved with strange symbols and appears mildly haunted. The spoon is not used for anything, but everyone agrees it brings luck. No one defines what kind. You roll the dice. They clatter across the warped table, one bouncing off a mug, the other disappearing into someone's stew. There's a pause. Everyone looks at the stew. A hand reaches in, plucks out the die, and announces, 7. You win. There's no explanation. Coins are pushed your way. The plum is yours now. You do not want it, but rejecting it feels dangerous. You're told it's your turn to call the hedgehog. You do not know what this means. You clear your throat and say, 3 hedgehogs. The entire table groans. One man slams his head into the table gently but meaningfully. Another weeps openly. Someone begins a quiet chant about betrayal. You apologize. This makes it worse. Apparently 3 hedgehogs is the worst possible thing you could have said, second only to mother's biscuit. You do not inquire further. Someone flips the table, not in anger, but as part of the game. Everyone steps back, as the stew die is recovered again, and blessed with a sip of ale. You are starting to understand why people end up living here. Not staying. Living. Permanently. Emotionally. Because once you've learned the rhythm of spoon games and cursed rodents, it's hard to return to a life where things make sense. The next game involves knives. Not throwing them, just balancing them on your hand while a bard sings increasingly aggressive lullabies. You try, and the knife falls, bouncing harmlessly off your boot. You are applauded. Crib tells you you've just earned the title of most awake. You accept it with a small bow. A new man joins. His name is Sedge. He carries a chicken and a grudge. He slams down a coin from a kingdom no one recognizes, yells, "Bog rules," and everyone cheers. You are handed dice again. They're different this time, slightly slimier. One hums. You roll and get crow, crow, millstone. Someone faints. The innkeeper shouts from across the room, "Not again," and disappears into the cellar. Crib pats your shoulder. "Good luck," he says solemnly, then backs away like you've started smoking. You win again. The chicken bows to you. You nod in return. Spoons are brought out for the final round. Actual battered spoons, one of which is slightly on fire. Each player slaps theirs on the table with rhythm and purpose, a metallic drumline of ancient rites. When it's your turn, you raise your spoon, then hesitate. It is too clean, too new. The man beside you grunts and trades you his. It is older than the tavern. It might have been a sword once. You slap it down with as much confidence as you can muster. Winner. Someone breathes. You do not know what game you just won, only that your spoon is taken reverently, placed on a mantle, and replaced with a wooden chicken that has one eye and an inscription that reads, "Don't." You're told you must now name your game. This is tradition. You panic and say the first thing that comes to mind. Stumble and regret. There is a pause. A man near the fire begins clapping slowly. Others join. The bard plays a note. You are given a small bell. You do not know what to do with it. You ring it. A goat bleats in the distance. You have ascended. Crib whispers that no one has won 3 games in a row since the incident. He doesn't elaborate. You don't ask. You are handed a small stool and told to defend your honor tomorrow, which may be metaphor or very literal. Either way, the stool is yours now. It wobbles slightly, as if anticipating betrayal. The dice are passed on. The spoons go back in their crate. The chicken is collected by Sedge, who salutes you. You return the gesture. You are now bound by whatever rules govern this place. You suspect that if you ever returned in a year, your name would still be on the roster under Unexpected Champion. In be dan down. Down like fans. And as like and sledively, someone starts another round. You are not invited. This is respect. You lean back, sip what may be your 5th ale, and watch as the chaos unfolds again. A man bets his shoes. A woman bets a song. Someone bets time, which seems ominous. You do not intervene. You simply observe, wooden chicken by your side. You never learned the rules. But somehow, you played them perfectly. The second stew arrives without warning, slid across the table by a boy who might be 12 or 40, depending on the lighting and his exposure to hardship. The bowl wobbles ominously, steam rising in a cloud that smells like hope and paprika's angry cousin. It's darker than the first stew, more committed somehow, as if it had something to prove. You are told it's venison. You are not told by whom. The information arrives the same way wind does, unrequested and full of doubt. The bowl is cracked in 3 places, but the stew holds steady, bound by either surface tension or fear. It glistens in a way that suggests oil, ambition, or possibly both. Floating in the thick surface is a chunk of something vaguely brown, vaguely meat, definitely solid. It stares at you. You stare back. This is a confrontation now. You do not ask questions, not because you are brave, but because you have learned the etiquette of this place. Questions are reserved for emergencies or confessions. You pick up your spoon, someone else's spoon, slightly burned from earlier, and dip it into the stew with the solemnity of a priest performing a rite. The spoon meets resistance. The stew pushes back. A brief but silent negotiation happens beneath the surface, and then your spoon surfaces victorious, bearing a glob of heat and mystery. You eat it. It is not venison, but it is seasoned, aggressively. You taste pepper, garlic, sorrow, and something that might be pride. A heat blooms in your mouth and radiates down your throat like a marching band of regret. You keep chewing, mostly because stopping now would mean acknowledging your mistake. Crib watches you, nodding slowly. You didn't flinch, he says. You feel honored, also mildly concerned about your ability to taste food ever again. Across the room, a woman slams her bowl down and declares, "Mine blinked." No one responds. A bard starts tuning his lute to a minor key. Someone opens a window. The stew steams harder, as if offended. Your second bite is easier. Not because the flavor has mellowed, but because you have. Your expectations have been recalibrated. You're no longer searching for culinary accuracy. You're searching for caloric surrender. The stew gives you that. It fills you in a way that suggests permanence. You might be full forever. You might never be hungry again. You might never be empty again. The chunks vary. Some are soft, some are chewy. One crunches, and you pretend it didn't. You are offered bread to go with it. The same bread, the same stone loaf. You decline. You don't need that kind of complication right now. Someone near the hearth begins to hum. Not a song, just a low hum, like an incantation or the sound of digestion starting its slow descent into battle. The innkeeper wipes her hands on an apron that looks like it's seen more blood than fabric. She meets your eyes, then looks away. You don't know what it means, but it feels important. A man 2 stools down says, "Tastes different every time." He says it like a warning or a compliment. It's unclear. You nod. You are learning to nod a lot. It's the safest emotion here. By your 4th spoonful, you stop tasting and start surviving. The heat has reached your ears. Your eyes water gently, respectfully. The stew is now a sensation more than a flavor. It is warmth and pressure and something that reminds you of mistakes made during harvest festivals. It sits heavy in your stomach like an oath. You ask, quietly, "What's in it?" Crib raises an eyebrow. "Meat." "Of what?" you ask. "Because you are a fool." "Of what's available," he replies. You stop asking. The spoon scrapes the bottom of the bowl. You realize you've finished it. You don't remember doing that. It feels like you've completed a trial, a rite, a test passed in broth. You sit back, breath shallow, chest warm, tongue forever changed. The boy who brought it returns. He takes the bowl without a word, but nods once. You nod back. You've bonded, not closely, but enough that if you both survived a shipwreck, you might share a plank. The goat watches you from beneath the table, judging. The duck has fallen asleep, possibly from its own serving. You do not disturb it. It deserves peace. Someone claps. You look up. It's the mysterious cloaked man from the corner. He's clapping very slowly, once every 5 seconds, like a clock that only tracks doom. You don't know why he's doing it. You don't ask. It feels earned. The stew lingers. In your mouth, in your memory, possibly in your bloodstream. You don't feel poisoned, but you do feel claimed. You belong to the stew now, in some small and indefinable way. Crib offers you a second bowl. You say no. He smiles. You've learned something. You don't know what, but you've learned it. Outside, the night presses against the windows. Inside, the tavern smells like firewood, ale, and ambition. And the stew, still bubbling in the pot near the hearth, as if waiting for the next soul foolish enough to seek warmth. You watch as someone else receives their bowl. You see the hesitation, the first bite, the moment of transformation. You nod again. They are part of it now. There is no going back. The ale is starting to taste like forgiveness, or at least plausible deniability. The room has softened at the edges, as if someone lowered the resolution just enough to be merciful. Shadows blur into laughter, and names stop mattering quite as much. You're sweating through your shirt, but so is everyone else, so technically you're just fitting in. Crib leans closer, though you've started to suspect he's not Crib. His eyes don't hold lies, but they cradle them gently, like a favorite pet that occasionally bites. He clears his throat with a gravity that suggests the next sentence may change your life, or your evening, or the contents of your stomach. My name's not really Crib, he says. You nod, as if you'd known all along. You hadn't, but you want credit. He doesn't offer his real name, just lets the confession sit between you like a small, weird animal. It breathes. He sips from his mug and looks out across the room like a knight watching a field he once lost. You wonder what prompted it. The stew? The second ale? Something darker? But you don't ask. This isn't a place for follow-ups. The barmaid wipes a glass with a cloth that was once a flag, possibly a nation's. Her hair is tied up with what appears to be an actual rope. She says, to no one in particular. I once kissed a noble. The room goes quiet for a moment. Then the fire crackles in support. You look at her. She doesn't look back. He had teeth like corn, she adds, then walks away. The silence holds a second longer before someone mutters, "Noble's noble." A man to your left raises his mug in solemn agreement. You do too. The ale is back to tasting like confusion and river rock. The bard has stopped pretending to know the song and is now humming the word destiny in various keys, all of them incorrect. His eyes are closed. His foot taps an unhelpful rhythm. A dog stares at him in concern. It might be your dog. It might be no one's. You blink slowly. Crib, or not Crib, sighs. I once threw a ring into a fire and it didn't melt, he says. You raise an eyebrow. What kind of ring? Promise ring. To myself. You nod. You don't understand, but you're starting to accept that this night isn't about understanding. It's about something deeper. Or dumber. A woman at the next table clutches her mug like a lifeline and tells everyone who's not listening that she used to be married to a man who believed in ghosts. But only ghosts of cows, she says. Wouldn't drink milk after sunset. No one argues. You respect that kind of conviction. You realize, with the dawning horror of someone catching their reflection mid-rant, that you're talking. You've been talking. You don't know when you started. Maybe when the barmaid spoke, or when the ale started speaking through you. But your mouth is definitely forming sentences, and they sound personal. You're telling Crib but not that you used to sleep with a knife under your pillow, not for protection, but because your uncle once said dreams were less dangerous when they knew you were armed. You're talking about your sister's donkey, how it ran away and came back fluent and stubborn. You mention a pond, a promise, a pair of boots that never quite fit. He listens the way only half-drunk men in firelight can, with a stillness that is either profound or deeply unconscious. You want to stop? You do not stop. You hear yourself say, "I don't know what I'm looking for." It's not a confession, it's a weather report. Still, it lands heavy. A few people glance over. You don't know if they heard or just felt the mood shift. The barmaid is leaning on the bar now, staring into her mug like it holds her next bad decision. She says, "The noble had soft hands, like eggs." Then she laughs, quietly. It's not a happy sound. The bard has now moved on to humming Consequence. Someone joins in with a spoon on a jug. It shouldn't work, and it doesn't, but they commit. The air thickens with spilled stories. Someone's lost child, someone's tattoo they regret, someone's belief that owls are just witches spying. No one judges. Everyone drinks. Crib leans closer again. "You're all right," he says. You believe him, which is alarming. You start to reply, but the room shifts again, just enough to remind you that gravity is optional in this place. Your thoughts slosh. You consider leaving. Then you consider what you'd be walking into. Night, wind, silence. Out there, you'd be alone with your thoughts. In here, at least the thoughts have backup vocals. You order another ale, not because you want it, but because the alternative is clarity. The barmaid nods once, as if she's seen this exact moment before. Maybe she has. Maybe every night is this night, just wearing a different face. Someone behind you begins to cry, loudly and without shame. Someone else sings harmony. You stare at the candle on the table, its wax collapsing like a promise in heat. You feel the moment beginning to float. You say one more thing. You're not sure what at island, but it feels true. The man at the center of the tavern clears his throat with the gravity of a bishop about to condemn bread. He slams down his mug and declares, loudly enough for the rafters to feel included, "I once fought a dragon." The words hang in the smoke-thick air. Conversations pause. Someone coughs. A goat sneezes. The room tilts toward him, not because anyone believes him, but because lies, this bold, deserve witness. He lifts his sleeve with dramatic flair, revealing a scar that snakes down his forearm. It is red, jagged, and distinctly unheroic. "Burn," he says proudly, thrusting the arm toward anyone close enough to recoil. You lean forward. It's clearly a soup accident. You can see the outline of a ladle, but no one points this out. Not because they don't know, but because taverns aren't for truth. Taverns are for stories, and this man has already decided his will be epic. The beast rose from the mountain like thunder given wings, he begins, his voice wobbling with ale and ambition. His audience leans closer. He describes scales black as coal, eyes burning like twin forges, and a roar that shook the very marrow of men. You sip your drink and wonder which mountain he means, because the nearest one is mostly known for turnip farming. Still, you let him continue. Everyone does. He's committed. He gestures wildly, nearly toppling a candle. His fingers spread to show how wide the dragon's wings were. According to him, they could cover the tavern twice over, maybe thrice, if the wind was right. He describes the maiden, golden hair, trembling lip, a scream that could curdle milk. No one asks how milk entered the scene. The maiden always does. It's tradition. Crib mutters beside you, "That's soup." You nod, but quietly. This isn't about accuracy. This is about performance. The man continues, his voice straining toward poetry but landing closer to poorly tuned lute. He speaks of his sword, forged in the fire of destiny, which looks suspiciously like the rusted blade now hanging from his belt. chipped and bent in ways that suggest hard bread, not dragon scales. He recounts his charge, fearless, hair blazing in the sunlight, though the scar on his head implies less blazing and more falling into a brazier. The duck waddles into the circle. It looks up at him, tilts its head, and quacks once. Sharp, judgmental, like a heckler. He ignores it. He is in the middle of describing how he leapt from a cliff onto the dragon's back, which in retrospect seems reckless, given his build suggests he struggles with stairs. He spreads his arms wide, nearly slapping the bard, who hisses but keeps strumming along with improvised chords. Every story deserves a soundtrack. He claims the dragon breathed fire so hot it turned rivers to steam, villages to ash, and his beard to a memory. His beard is, in fact, patchy at best, but everyone murmurs approvingly. One man even crosses himself. The duck quacks again, louder. No one laughs. Everyone waits. The storyteller pauses for effect, lifting his mug with the solemnity of a priest raising sacrament. "But I stood my ground," he declares. "I alone, with nothing but courage, steel, and this very scar." He waves his arm again. The ladle shape glistens in the firelight. He doesn't notice. He is already lost in the glory of his own lie. The barmaid interrupts only once, placing a fresh bowl of stew at his elbow. He thanks her with a nod, then folds it seamlessly into the tale. And there was stew, a cauldron as big as a house. I tripped, scalded myself. Nay, the dragon scalded me. He points at his scar. The crowd gasps at the audacity of such myth-making. The duck, furious at being ignored, flaps onto a stool and slaps its wings in applause. The tavern erupts. Not because they believe him, but because belief isn't the point. He bows slightly, sweat dripping from his brow, and collapses into his seat with the air of a man who has survived both battle and exaggeration. Coins clink into his mug. Someone slaps his back hard enough to nearly knock him unconscious. Crib leans over to you again. "Soup," he repeats, certain. You nod again, still quietly. The bard starts playing a new tune, one that tries to match the tale. Fiery, loud, slightly off-key. Patrons raise their mugs, shouting toasts to dragons, to soup, to scars, to bravery in all its fabricated forms. The goat climbs onto a bench and bleats triumphantly. The rooster crows, possibly on cue. The duck quacks 3 times in rhythm. The tavern becomes a chorus, not of truth, but of shared imagination. You realize, in that moment, that nobody here cares what's real. Not the man, not the bard, not even the animals. The story is the meal. The scar is garnish. You raise your mug too, drinking to dragons that never were, scars that came from soup, and the lies that make the night feel larger than at island. The man leans back, satisfied, stew forgotten. His eyes close. He begins to snore. The tavern doesn't mind. They've already moved on, telling the story again, changing details, making the dragon bigger, the maiden louder, the scar longer. Tomorrow, someone else will claim the same tale. Next week, it will be yours. No one will question it. The duck, however, will always remember, and always clap the loudest. Willa glides between tables with the authority of a monarch and the speed of someone who's been dodging hands, questions, and arrows her whole life. She wears an apron that might once have been white, though now it is embroidered entirely in stains that tell more history than a monastery library. Her hair is pulled back with a ribbon that looks too fine for this place, as if it escaped from a noble's boudoir and decided taverns were more fun. She places a mug in front of you without asking, and somehow you know it's exactly what you wanted. You didn't even know what you wanted. She did. She calls you by your name. Not the name you gave, but your name, the one you barely remember, the one that feels heavier than it should when spoken aloud. She says it casually, as if she's ordering bread, but it lands in your stomach like a stone. You do not ask how she knows. Willa knows everything. To question it would only prove how little you belong here. Her laugh cuts through the noise, sharp and exact, aimed like a dagger at the man who just tried to flirt with her using the phrase, like a swan, but warmer. She replies in a language you don't recognize. It is, nonetheless, perfectly insulting. The man blinks, takes a long drink, and pretends he wasn't wounded. Willa's smirk is brief, but it lingers in the air longer than the smoke. You realize she speaks every tongue, but her favorite is disdain. She refills your mug again without breaking eye contact. You hadn't emptied it yet. She does not care. She is not serving ale so much as prescribing it. She places the cup with the precision of a physician, as though the right amount of froth might heal your soul or expose your sins. Maybe both. Rumors follow her like smoke follows fire. Some say she was once the mistress of a duke. Others say she was the duke. Still others claim she was born from lightning, left on the tavern step by a thunderstorm too afraid to raise her. The stories contradict, overlap, and collapse under their own weight, but everyone agrees on one point. Willa knows too much. She has seen too much. And she is still here, which makes her more dangerous than any cloaked stranger or scarred braggart. She leans over to wipe your table, and you notice her eyes, bright, sharp, endlessly amused. She looks at you as if she's already read your diary and found the embarrassing parts more interesting than the heroic ones. You want to protest, to reclaim some dignity, but she's already walking away, tossing a quip over her shoulder in perfect weaponized sarcasm. It hits harder than any blade. You laugh, though you're not sure if it's with her or at yourself. The tavern bends around her presence. Fights pause when she passes. Dice land differently when she's watching. Even the bard corrects his rhythm when she glares. She is the axis of this place, the hidden law, the one constant in a room full of shifting smoke and louder lies. You suspect she could topple kingdoms just by rolling her eyes hard enough. A man near the hearth asks for water. Willa raises one eyebrow so high it might pierce the ceiling beams. The room laughs, but not cruelly, just knowingly. The man quickly changes his order to ale, and balance is restored. You wonder if she is mortal. You wonder if she is divine. You decide it's safer to assume she is both. Crib, or whoever he really island, leans over and mutters, "Don't fall in love with her. Everyone does. It's too late. You're already gone," sinking under the weight of her smirk, her impossible knowledge, the way she carries the tavern like a crown she never asked for but refuses to give back. You sip your ale, pretending you're still in control. You are not. Willa passes again, this time balancing 3 plates, a tray of mugs, and the attention of every patron in the room. She places the plates in front of men who didn't order food but eat anyway because Willa decided they needed it. She drops the mugs with just enough force to remind their owners they'd better tip in coins, not teeth. She brushes by you, and for a moment you catch the faintest scent of rosemary. It makes no sense. Nothing in this tavern has smelled like herbs in decades, but here she is, fragrant with something that feels almost holy. She stops suddenly, mid-stride, and looks toward the cloaked stranger in the corner. He shifts under her gaze. No one else has ever made him do that. For a breath, the tavern freezes, the air thick with unspoken knowledge. Then she smirks again, the moment breaks, and the crowd exhales. But you know you just saw the closest thing this room has to fear, and it isn't dragons. You raise your mug, partly in thanks, partly in surrender. Willa catches your motion out of the corner of her eye, and without turning, says, "You're welcome." You didn't say anything. You didn't even think it loudly, but she heard it. Of course she did. She always does. You drink, because that's what she wants you to do. And for reasons you don't dare analyze, you're glad to obey. The first rat appears as naturally as the fire crackles, scurrying across the floorboards with the confidence of a long-term tenant. No one screams. No one even flinches. A few patrons nod in respect. You understand, instinctively, that rats here are not pests. They are citizens. The tavern is not simply their home, it is their kingdom, built of crumbs and courage. You stare as the rat pauses, sits upright, and adjusts the tiniest hat you have ever seen. It's felt, red, slightly crooked. It is magnificent. The barmaid steps over him without breaking stride, balancing mugs as though she has done this dance 1,000 times. The bard shifts his tune, almost unconsciously, to something that feels rodent-like, quick, and skittering. The rat bows to the rhythm. You are no longer sure where the tavern ends and the legend begins. You drop a crumb. It's instinct, like feeding pigeons or nodding in church. The crumb doesn't hit the floor. It vanishes mid-air, snatched by a blur so efficient you question whether you even had bread to begin with. A moment later, a rat stands on the table, whiskers twitching, front paws raised in a gesture that is unmistakably gratitude. You freeze. Then he flashes something else, a flicker of paw movements too deliberate to be chance. Rat sign language. You don't know how you know, but you know. He said thank you. He said more than that. He said friend. You nod. The rat nods back. You swear never to tell. Some things are sacred. The others notice nothing unusual. Crib drinks deeply. Soup scar man snores against the wall. The duck quacks in 3/4 time. But for you, the world has tilted. You have a new ally, one who operates in shadows and crumbs, one who wears a hat. You decide his name is Biscuit. He accepts this silently, adjusting his hat with dignity. Biscuited Island. From that moment, you begin to see the rat network everywhere. A tail vanishes under the hearth. Eyes gleam from a crack in the ceiling beam. Scratches in the corner are not random. They're runes, messages carved in a code too ancient for human tongues. You realize the tavern is alive not because of the people, but because of the rats. They run its veins, its bones, its memory. And you've just been inducted into their quiet fraternity. Biscuit brings you an offering, half a peanut. You do not ask where he found it. You accept it with ceremony, tucking it into your pocket like treasure. This is a pact, a treaty sealed in salt and shell. You are not sure what comes next, but you suspect it involves loyalty unto death. At one point, a drunken man spots a rat and reaches for his boot. The tavern freezes. Willa appears at his side before the boot leaves the ground. She leans close and whispers something you cannot hear, but it is enough to drain the color from his face. He lowers the boot. He lowers his head. The rat scampers away unharmed, and the tavern exhales. You realize, with a jolt, that Willa does not rule this place. She enforces its true ruler, and that ruler is the rats. Biscuit climbs onto your shoulder. No one comments. No one looks twice. It feels natural, as if he has always belonged there, perched like a talisman. His whiskers brush your ear, and you almost hear words. Not quite words, but the shape of them. He is telling you something, warning you, maybe, guiding you. You sip your ale, nodding sagely, because that's what a rat companion deserves. The bard begins a new song, a strange one, half lullaby, half battle hymn. It mentions shadows and crowns, claws and crumbs. People sing along, half joking, but their voices hold a reverence that unsettles you. Are they singing about kings or about the rats? Biscuit squeaks, and you know the answer. The goat sneezes. The duck snores. The tavern lives, breathes, hums with the weight of secrets. You feel yourself sinking deeper into it, no longer just a visitor, but part of its strange architecture. The stew in your stomach, the ale in your blood, the rat on your shoulder, they bind you tighter than oaths. Later, as candles burn low and the air grows thick, Biscuit leaves you. He scurries down your arm and vanishes into the cracks, his little hat glowing faintly in the firelight. You feel the loss immediately, a cold absence where warmth had been, but you know he will return. You know he always will. Because Biscuit is not just a rat. He is your rat. You lean back, exhale, and sip the dregs of your mug. You are not alone in this tavern. You will never be alone again. The priest enters without announcement, as though the door is simply another parishioner under his command. He glides in, tall, pale, eyes like polished stone, robes that seem too clean for this place. The tavern tilts around him, a roomful of drunks suddenly aware of their sins. Even the goat straightens, as if remembering etiquette. You do not bow, but you do lower your eyes, the way a candle lowers its flame in the wind. He carries no mug, no jug, no coin, only a steaming cup of tea. No one knows where it came from. There is no kettle in this tavern, no herbs, no clear water source, yet he holds it as casually as a shepherd holds a crook. He sips. The sound is delicate, deliberate. The entire tavern listens. He does not sit. He stands in the middle of the floor, glaring at mugs of ale as though they've personally offended God. He lingers longest on yours, and for a moment you feel as though your tongue has betrayed you. Then, with a suddenness that feels like mercy, he takes a tankard from the table beside him and drinks it in a single swallow. Foam clings to his lip, which he wipes away with the back of his hand. He sighs, not in satisfaction, but in resignation, as if even holy men must drown in barley eventually. The bard stops mid-song. The lute hums awkwardly, one note stretching into silence. Willa leans against the bar, unimpressed. She crosses her arms, as if to say even priests pay in silver or shame. The priest ignores her. He places his tea, still full, onto the table beside a man too frightened to move it. He raises his hands over the pot of stew, bubbling near the hearth. His lips move. The words are not for you. The stew sizzles. It bubbles with more fury than before, spitting against the rim, sending up a hiss that sounds too much like a curse. The innkeeper steps back, mutters a prayer of her own. Everyone waits. The stew calms, settling into a slow, even boil. Someone claps once, then stops when the priest glances their way. Crib whispers to you, "It's just stew. Always was." You nod, but you know that tonight, at least, the stew has been judged, weighed, and either forgiven or condemned, and you're not entirely sure which. The priest turns. His eyes sweep the room like a tide, washing guilt onto every face. A man at the back, red-eyed and trembling, blurts out, "I never meant to steal the pig." No one asked him. No one cares. But he collapses into sobs. The priest does not acknowledge him. He simply sips his tea again, though you notice the cup has never cooled, steam curling up as if from some deeper source. Someone slides a coin across the table, quietly, hoping perhaps to bribe fate. It stops in front of you. You do not touch it, not while the priest is watching. The duck quacks, loudly. It breaks the silence. For a heartbeat, you fear divine lightning will smite it. Instead, the priest nods at the duck, solemnly, as though they share an understanding. You do not ask. Some bonds are beyond mortal explanation. Then, without fanfare, the priest turns and walks toward the door. His robes barely stir the dust. He does not pay. He does not thank. He simply leaves. The door creaks open, then shuts behind him with a weighty finality. The tavern breathes again. Shoulders drop. The bard strums a clumsy chord. Laughter erupts too loud, too desperate. Someone drains their mug in one gulp and slams it down, as if to prove ale still belongs here. Willa smirks, muttering, "Even saints run tabs." You glance at the stew. It bubbles quietly, innocently, as though nothing had happened. But you know, everyone knows, something in that pot has changed. Maybe for the better, maybe not. You drink deeply, because the priest didn't bless your ale. And that feels like the truest miracle of all. The mug arrives without request, set before you by a hand you do not see. It's filled with liquid so purple it seems to glow in the firelight, thick as syrup and menacing as prophecy. You ask the obvious question, "What is this?" And the man across from you, face weathered like old bark, grins and says, "Fortified courage." The words are both invitation and warning. You thank him, though you are not sure for what. You lift the mug. The smell hits first. It is part fruit, part earth, part cellar where secrets rot. It promises either greatness or ruin, possibly both at once. You hesitate. Crib nudges you with an elbow. "Drink," he says. He does not say why. That's the point. The first sip is socks. Damp socks, boiled and strained through ambition. Yet beneath it, there's something else. Sweetness that almost feels intentional. Sharpness that could be spice. And heat that spreads like gossip in a small village. You cough once, twice, then force a smile because everyone is watching. Applause bursts around you. Genuine, like you've just passed a trial. The room bends a little at the edges. Not much. Just enough that the ceiling beams sway like drunkards, and the candles leave trails when you blink. You drink again, because it would be rude not to. That second sip, though, is less forgiving. It kicks you square in the chest, burns through your veins, and whispers directly into your skull. The whisper is unintelligible, but you nod along. It feels wise. The bard notices the shift in your face and strums something reckless. The duck flaps its wings, inspired. A man leaps onto a bench and declares his love for turnips. You, caught in the wave, stand too. Words tumble out of you, words you did not plan. "I will never fear bread again." The tavern erupts in cheers. Bread raises no objections. The drink keeps moving, curling through you like smoke in a locked room. It changes the way you see. Willa behind the bar is no longer wiping mugs but weaving spells. The goat glows faintly, haloed in green light, its scarf fluttering in non-existent wind. The stew in the pot hums with a low note that vibrates in your teeth. You laugh. Then you dance. You do not know the steps. Your feet know. They stomp and sway, tapping rhythms older than the tavern, older than the language you speak. The floor joins in, creaking in time. Someone claps. Someone else spins you by the arm, and suddenly you are part of a whirl of bodies, sweat, laughter, and boots slamming wood. For a heartbeat, you belong completely, dissolved into the chaos, carried by purple courage. Then you stop, because the drink stops you. It reminds you that ambition burns as easily as it warms. Your stomach tightens. Your head swims too far. The walls lean in like curious giants. The room claps slower, heavier, until each beat feels like judgment. You regret. Not everything, just the second sip. The second sip was too much. You grip the table. Biscuit the rat appears, hat askew, steadying you with a paw on your thumb. You whisper, "Thank you." He squeaks something that might mean fool or friend. You accept both. Around you, life continues. Crib argues with the bard about destiny versus fate. The mysterious cloaked man stares harder than ever into his corner, perhaps trying not to laugh. The priest is long gone, but his absence feels like another kind of presence. And Willa? Willa smirks, watching you ride the purple wave, her eyes sharp as glass. She knew this would happen. She let it. The drink lingers long after you stop sipping. It lodges in your bones, nestles behind your eyes, hums in your veins like a forgotten hymn. You don't know if it has made you stronger, or weaker, or simply stranger. Probably all three. You lean back, exhausted, exhilarated, and just a little terrified. The mug is still half full, gleaming purple in the firelight, daring you. You push it gently away. You have learned your lesson, or at least you have survived it. The tavern applauds one last time, not for your dancing, not for your courage, but for the fact that you are still upright. You bow, slightly, and sit down. You will not drink again. Not tonight. Probably. It begins with the bard, as most catastrophes here do. One moment he's perched proudly, lute in hand, humming a tune about destiny, and the next he tips backwards, stool legs snapping like twigs under a storm. He lands with a thud that rattles mugs. The lute screeches. For a heartbeat, silence reigns. Then the tavern erupts, not in sympathy but in cheer, because in this place gravity is just another form of entertainment. The goat seizes the opportunity. It leaps onto the fallen stool, headbutts the bard's wig clean off his head, and trots triumphantly across the room, wearing it like a crown. Laughter booms. The duck quacks 3 times in rhythm. The bard groans from the floor, humiliated but not surprised. This has happened before. You suspect it will happen again. Someone throws a pie. No one knows who. It arcs through the smoke-filled air like a divine gift and splatters against the wall with a wet finality. The crowd cheers louder, as if this too was scheduled. Another pie appears, then a third. Soon, the tavern is half food fight, half festival, stew dripping from beams, bread bouncing off shoulders. A man wipes custard from his beard and declares himself baptized. No one argues. You try to duck for cover, but instead you are pulled into something stranger, a conga line. It begins as a drunken circle near the hearth, then stretches, growing arms and legs, winding through tables and around chairs, dragging strangers and friends alike into its orbit. You resist for half a second before someone grabs your waist and pushes you forward. You're in. The line snakes past the bar, around the goat still prancing in his wig, and back toward the stew. It smells like onions, sweat, secrets, and questionable life choices. You stumble along in rhythm, knees lifting too high, boots pounding wood. Behind you, Crib joins with surprising enthusiasm, shouting a war cry about hedgehogs. Ahead of you, the barmaid, Willa smirks, refusing to participate, but clapping in a way that makes everyone feel judged and yet desperate for her approval. The line loops again, louder, sweatier, faster. The bard crawls out of the way, muttering about destiny and cracked ribs. A chair breaks. It collapses under a man the size of a barrel, splinters spraying into the air like shrapnel. No one claims it. Chairs in this tavern have no owners, only victims. A replacement is fetched immediately, not to sit on, but to smash ceremoniously against the wall. It breaks again, almost eagerly, as if that was its true purpose all along. Applause follows. The music shifts. Not because the bard plays, but because the room itself begins to hum. Voices layering over stomps, mugs slamming tabletops, spoons clanging against metal. Its noise made holy by chaos, a choir of drunken joy. You add your voice to it, half shout, half laugh, not knowing the words and not needing to. Everyone is singing different things, but together it sounds like a hymn for the end of the world. The goat leaps onto a table, wig askew, and bleats in time with the beat. The duck flaps its wings in protest, trying to restore order, but fails. Someone tries juggling knives. Someone else tries juggling bread. Both fail. More cheering, more stomping. The tavern shakes as if it's alive, as if the walls themselves are clapping along. The conga line dissolves into a spiral, people spinning, mugs spilling, hats flying. A man twirls you around, nearly dropping you but catching you at the last moment with a grin. He shouts something about destiny's ankles. You laugh, because it makes sense here. Everything makes sense, and nothing does. The stew pot tips, bubbling over, steam rising in thick clouds that make the rafters sweat. Someone ladles the overflow into mugs. Someone else pours it directly onto their head, declaring themselves cleansed. A rat scurries through the chaos, biscuit perhaps, whiskers twitching in approval. Another chair breaks, this time mid-air, because someone decided to throw it just to see what might happen. It crashes into the floorboards, splintering into more pieces than physics should allow. A hush falls for half a second, then the cheer returns, louder than before. Destruction is just another form of applause here. You realize you are no longer just observing. You are in it, swallowed by the noise, carried by the storm. Your feet move without permission, your hands slap the table in rhythm, your throat joins the chorus of chaos. You are one of them now, indistinguishable from the laughter, the music, the madness, and for the first time all night, you don't want to leave. Someone bellows, "Last call," but it's more prophecy than decree. No one listens, no one ever does. The fire in the hearth wheezes and spits, the logs collapsing inward with the sigh of a tired beast. But it still clings to life, painting the walls in shades of orange that wobble like drunken saints. Shadows stretch themselves into strange poses, swaying across beams, curling over mugs, bending in ways human bodies cannot, but human stories often do. The bard mumbles half a rhyme and half a snore, face planted into his lute. It still hums faintly, as if dreaming on his behalf. Willa yawns at the bar, wide and unapologetic, a queen tired of her throne but unwilling to abdicate. She wipes down the same mug for the 5th time, not because it needs cleaning, but because ritual matters. Every tavern has its rites, and this one is hers. Wipe, sigh, glance, smirk, repeat. The smirk is aimed at you now, because you are still awake, still sitting upright, still pretending that one more drink will bring you closer to wisdom instead of ruin. Crib has given up entirely. He snores from inside a barrel, only his legs sticking out like roots. Someone drew a crown on his forehead in charcoal, and he snores louder, as if to claim the title. A rat curls against his boot. Asleep too, hat tipped low. They look oddly regal together. Man and vermin both surrendered to dreams. You order one last mug. You don't even say it. You just think it, and somehow it appears, set in front of you before you blink. The foam spills slightly, dripping down the side like honey, and you stare at it with the reverence of a pilgrim before a relic. This isn't ale anymore. This is the final word in a language you'll never fully understand. The punctuation at the end of a night too full to contain itself. The stool beneath you creaks, but not in protest. In agreement, it shifts slightly, almost comfortably, as if adjusting to your weight, not out of strain but loyalty. You realize, with a flicker of dread and delight, that you could stay here forever. Not trapped, not imprisoned, chosen. The stool has chosen you. The tavern has chosen you. The rats, the goat, the duck, even the stew. They've all carved space for you in their chaos. Outside, the moon presses its face against the window, round and pale, a nosy neighbor checking if the party is truly over. The night is vast, empty, colder than it has any right to be. In here, the walls hug close, warm with bodies, alive with stories, thick with the smell of smoke and spilled courage. You don't want to step out into silence. You don't want to trade this noise for solitude. Someone starts another song. Not the bard. He's unconscious. But a chorus of mismatched voices rising in uneven harmony. They don't know the words, or maybe they do, but they've forgotten how to sing them sober. The melody is jagged, lurching from joy to grief in a single breath, but it fills the tavern like incense. You hum along, half under your breath, and feel the room shift to hold you closer. Willa sets down her cloth and leans on the bar, watching, measuring. She knows who will leave tonight and who never will. Her smirk softens, just a little, as if she's already filed you under the second list. You don't argue. You don't want to. The fire sputters again. Sparks leap like dancers too drunk to stop, then fade into ash. Someone claps lazily, as though applauding the fire's final bow. The room smells faintly of char, faintly of bread, faintly of everything you've lost and found tonight. You take a long drink. Let it burn your throat. Let it anchor you in the wooden bones of this place. Closing time is just a suggestion here. The tavern doesn't close. It waits. It breathes. It holds you until you're ready to leave. And even then, it keeps your shadow for safekeeping. You know, deep down, that even if you stagger out into the night, some part of you will remain in this chair, in this air, in this endless evening where firelight and laughter cling stubbornly to the rafters. You sip again. The mug is empty now. The stool sighs. The moon peers closer. You decide you can live with forever. Sleep here is not promised. It is bartered, bribed, stumbled into. When you finally ask where to lay your head, answers collide around you like drunk dice. One man insists the tavern has a cot upstairs, though no one has seen it in years. Another points to a spot on the floor near the wall, where the boards are less warped but far more haunted. The innkeeper shrugs, mutters something about the stable out back, and disappears before you can protest. You are left standing with your mug, blinking at options that sound less like rest and more like punishment. The bard groans in his corner, sprawled across two stools, hugging his lute as if it's his child. Crib still snores from his barrel, crown smudged but unchallenged. Willa offers no advice, only the smirk of someone who has already chosen her bed and refuses to share its location. Eventually, you surrender to inevitability. The hearth glows faintly, embers pulsing like the last heartbeat of a dying beast. Around it lies a ragged heap of cloaks, scarves, and blankets. Donations from drunkards who never returned for them, or perhaps sacrifices to the tavern itself. You crawl into the pile, the fabric scratchy and damp in places, but warm enough where it matters. The fire kisses your skin with uneven heat. It is imperfect, which makes it perfect. The cat arrives without invitation. It pads softly across your chest, kneads your ribs once or twice, and then collapses against your side with the indifference of royalty. Its fur smells faintly of ale, smoke, and secrets. You do not move it. You are furniture now, and that feels like honor. From the rafters, a rat descends, scuttling down the beam, vanishing into the pile beside you. It nestles somewhere near your feet. You swear you hear it snore. The sound is tiny, absurd, almost comforting. You smile in the dark, though you didn't mean to. Around you, the tavern drifts into its own kind of slumber. The laughter has dulled to murmurs, the stomping reduced to the occasional creak. Someone coughs in their sleep. Someone mutters about turnips. The goat sighs from the doorway, scarf tangled like a flag of surrender. The duck has claimed a bench, beak tucked beneath its wing, feathers glowing faintly in the last light. Even the stew has quieted, no longer bubbling but brooding, as though conserving strength for another day. Your body softens into the cloaks, each layer carrying its own story. Wool heavy with rain, silk shredded but stubborn, fur stiff with age. You feel them all pressing into you, holding you, claiming you. You close your eyes, and sleep comes not gently, but greedily, dragging you down before you can resist. You dream of soup, endless and gray, ladled into bowls that never empty, of ducks marching in line, each quacking the same word you cannot remember upon waking, of drinks glowing purple and green, swirling into patterns that sing to you in voices you almost recognize, of Willa's smirk, sharp as a blade, and Biscuit's hat, shining like a crown, of Crib, finally telling you his real name, though you forget it immediately. The dreams are not restful, but they are true. The cat shifts, stretching claws into your side, reminding you that you are still here, still flesh, still temporary. You do not wake up on purpose. You do not want to. The tavern holds you, its floor your bed, its air your blanket, its chaos your lullaby. Outside, the night growls at the windows, but in here, you are safe, if only because you belong to it now. You sink deeper into the cloaks, deeper into the noise of breathing beasts and dreaming men, and the tavern hums around you like a mother with too many children to count. You let go. The tavern does not let go. It never will. Morning does not arrive gently. It kicks the shutters open and slaps you across the face with a handful of sunlight, as if to remind you that the night was never free. You groan and pull the cloak pile tighter, but it's no use. Daylight has no mercy for tavern dwellers. Your mouth tastes like regret, onions, and something faintly metallic, which you assume is medieval in origin. Every decision you made yesterday seems carved into your tongue. None of them were good. All of them felt brilliant at the time. You sit up slowly, head pounding like a blacksmith forging shame. The hearth is cold now, just ash and embers, a skeleton of last night's chaos. The chairs are broken in new ways. A table leans against the wall as though it fought in a war, and the wigged goat is gone, though it has left behind an unmistakable smell and 3 hoofprints on the bar. The duck is still here, perched on a stool, staring at you with eyes that know too much. You salute it weakly. It does not return the gesture. Willa appears with the inevitability of death. She sets a cup of water in front of you, clear and cool, then drops a piece of bread onto the table. Not fresh bread, not good bread, survival bread. It looks like it could break teeth. You eat it anyway, because your body craves punishment. She watches you chew with the faint smirk of someone who told you this would happen. You try to thank her, but your voice cracks into something between a cough and a prayer. She walks away before you can finish. Crib is gone. His barrel is empty, the crown smudged into nothing. He has left behind only a faint smell of ale and a sense of unfinished business. You wonder if he was real at all, or if the tavern conjured him as a companion for your first night. Either way, you feel his absence like a missing tooth, small but noticeable every time your tongue brushes against it. You reach for your belt and discover it too is gone. Not stolen, just gone. The buckle lies on the floor, the leather nowhere in sight, as if the belt decided it had endured enough and walked out into the fields to start a new life. You accept this with a strange, hungover calm. Belts are temporary. Regret is eternal. The tavern itself is quiet now. Morning stillness hums through the beams, a silence thick with exhaustion. The rats are invisible. The bard is curled in a corner beneath his lute, and even the stew has gone dormant, congealed in its pot like a sleeping god. The air smells of wood smoke and bodies, faint but lingering. And you realize this place is never truly empty, only paused, waiting. You tell yourself you'll never come back. You whisper it into your cup of water like an oath. You will go outside. You will breathe clean air, find clean clothes, live a life that doesn't end with purple drinks and questionable stew. You say it with conviction, nodding solemnly, like a man renouncing old sins. But the tavern hears you. It always does. The stool beneath you creaks in disagreement, shifting as though it knows your weight too well to believe you. The duck quacks once, sharp and mocking. Even the ashes in the hearth stir, as though laughing. You sigh, because you know, they know. Everyone knows. You will be back by supper.